Okay, we're starting the third topic, which is about Avodas Karka. Most people look at Avodas Karka and say the whole topic, B'chlal, doesn't apply to them. They're not farmers. So I'm going to try to talk about some of the bigger issues just in general, just understand the dinim. Some applications that have to do with people who are not farmers.
Charlotte, we got
right, correct. Correct. Right, someone has a yard and this and that in there. And we had talked about people with flower pots. We'll talk about the flower pots we sort of did already, but talk about like people have their own. But I'm also, we did anyhow. But also we're going to talk about, in particular, three really significant kulas that the Chazon Ish said that help farmers who want to keep shvius. They're not going to be today. One next time and two more at a different time. Three really significant kulas that farmers follow that most others don't agree with. That are very important for farmers to be, so to speak, functional during Shemittah. Okay, so the first thing is we'll start like this. When today we're going to talk about the Melachos that are Midaraisa. But before I tell you the Melachos that are Midaraisa, we have to know the following. In Hilchos Shabbos, there's 39 Avos, and those Avos have plenty of toldos to them. Okay, and the din of Hilchos Shabbos is that if an Av is Asr, a tolda is Asr Midaraisa also. Okay, the Av might be one thing, and the tolda is another thing, but they're just equally Asr. Okay, the Mamash, it's equal as far as the din is concerned. Okay, it doesn't work like that for Hilchos Shvius. Okay, the Gemara says that in the Torah, we're going to see in a second, the Torah tells us 4 things that you're not allowed to do, and of those 4 things, 2 would be toldos of the other ones. The Gemara says that Zomer, which is pruning, would be a tolda of Zoreah, planting. From our perspective, that would have been a tolda. And botzer would be a tolda of Kotzer. Botzer is harvesting grapes. It would be a tolda of Kotzer, which is harvesting grains and things like that. So the Gemara says, why does it say that? Why did the Torah tell it to us, repeat itself? Why did it bother to even tell us toldas altogether? So the Gemara says it's a raya that for Shvius, there's no such thing as toldas. Is it in the Bible? We're right around now. Yes, good. Beginning of my cup. Yes. So that it teaches us that at least that's what we paskin. Not everybody holds it. That we paskin that it teaches us that toldos are not asur midaraisa. Toldos are only asur midrabanan. Okay. So now, usually that's a
except for the ones that are explicitly described.
Yeah, except for we're going to talk about some maybe exceptions, but except the things that specifically are asur, there's no such thing as a tolda being asur midaraisa. So usually it's nice to know what it is at the Raisa D'Rabbanan, but for Shvius it has an extra relevance to know what's Asher Midraisa Midrabanan, because the Melachos that are Asher Midrabanan are the Melachos. There's a special rule which is like this: things that are Melachos that are only Asher Midrabanan. Okay, there's 2 different ways that people do Melacha on Shvius. One is called Ukmi Lana. That means to keep a tree going and to prevent it from being damaged, just to hold it up, just to keep it the way it's supposed to be. And for something that's only a Melacha Midrabanan, Ukmi Ilana, B'derech Klal, Ukmi Ilana is mutter. As opposed to Avri Ilana, which is to make a tree better, or to have, that it should be more productive than it would have been, that's Asr, those things are Asr Midrabanan. Okay, so the things that are Melachos Midrabanan are Asr usually are Asr even for Ukmi Ilana. Okay, but the things that are Asr Midrabanan are only Asr for Avri Ilana. Okay, so it's a very serious nafkamina, and being as you're going to hear, we only have 4, 5, or 6 melachos l'raisa. The bulk of the things that people could do on Shvius are only melachos rabbanan. It's pretty hard to do a melacha d'oraisa. I mean, unless you plant something in the ground, you're pretty hard to do it. It's the melacha d'oraisa. Therefore, everything is going to end up being a melacha d'rabbanan, and melachos rabbanan have this huge kula, which is that they're only Asr if it's for Avri Ilana, not for Ukmi Ilana. Okay, so now we're going to talk more about that next time. Next time we're going to talk about the Melachos D'Rabbanan and when those kulas apply and when they don't. But this is just a general rule, just to get us started. This is just a general rule that for Ukmi Ilana, Melachos D'Rabbanan are mutter, and Avri Ilana, Melachos D'Rabbanan are Asr. Okay, so what are the Melachos? So the starting point is that the Torah tells us 4 melachos. Okay, the favorites in Torah are 4 melachos. These 4 melachos are the melachos for which you get malchus for. The other 1 or 2 that we're going to talk about, the other 2 that we're going to talk about that are possible melachos, even if they're asim midaraisa, there's no malchus because they're not in the pasuk like this. Okay, the pasuk says like this. B'sham Shvius, you have Shvius, and the pasuk says like this. It says Okay, you're not allowed to plant anything. Okay, that's the first malacha d'oraisa is Zoreah. That's planting a vegetable or a grain. That malacha is just for putting it into the ground even before it takes root. The next malacha is v'charmacha le'sizmor, and I mean the picture is not great over here. Charmacha le'sizmor, which means to prune a grape vine. Okay, it's specific to grapes. It's not to other trees. Specific to grapes. It's a shiloh whether it applies only taking away dead branches or even if you cut away live branches also. Sometimes taking away live branches is not Zomer. And what's going to be important, we'll do this more next time, what's important is that Zomer is only when a person is strategically removing branches to help it grow better. Stam cutting branches is not Zomer. Okay? Zomer is a malacha that needs conscious focus on what you're trying to do. You have to be specifically trying to do it, and we'll talk next time examples of where that comes up. But Zomer is very specific. Zoreah is just planting. Planting is planting. But Zomer, it's not just the same cutting that I do and that you do is not necessarily the same malacha. If I have one thing in mind and you have a different, it's not the same malacha.
Well, I'm going to ask you, planting also, say just take seeds and drop without furring it.
That'll be awesome.
That'll be awesome also.
Yeah, because
it's not a real plant. I mean, it's not.
Because you're planting, but Zomer is not like that. Okay. Cutting is not the same.
Something or something.
What? Right? Because okay. Next.
It's not called
Kotzer.
Okay. The next passage says, okay, it says you're not allowed to harvest. The sviach means the things that grow by themselves. You're not allowed to harvest the things that grow by themselves. In other words, the pasuk just said you're not allowed to plant. So you're not planting anything. So whatever is growing is things that grew by itself. It's sviach chitzircha or sikter. So now, obviously, the Torah doesn't have in mind that you're not allowed to harvest produce. Right? You actually have special rules on what you're supposed to do after you harvest it. You're allowed to eat the produce from trees. So what is the pasuk telling you when it says you shouldn't harvest the things that grow by themselves? So we learn out two things from that. One is you're not allowed to harvest it in a way that helps the land. There are ways of harvesting that helps the land grow better. That we learned from Mositzer. And the fact that it says Ketzir Cha, that it's yours, means you're not allowed to harvest it in the way that an owner would do. You're not allowed to harvest it in a way that shows ownership over the land. In fact, the guy in the picture before, he's gone already, sitting with a machine, harvesting all the stuff together, that's a person who's showing bias over as if this is my field. The person who's the owner takes everything and takes it in a certain way. As opposed to a person who's just randomly walking in and taking a few apples or taking some grains that are growing, that person's not doing like a biome, he's just taking something, that's what's mutter. Okay, so you're now...
It's not a din in Avodas Karka, right?
Well,
it's more than Kashrus of berries.
No. This is a malacha in the karka. This is a malacha. It's considered a malacha to do in the karka. Really? You're right, but it has to do with the way I treat the pears. But it's a these are the malachas.
The first part you said, the second part, cutting in a certain way. I mean, like showing bias. That's
when the Torah says don't act like it's your ketzircha. You're saying that sounds like the chiyuv that you have to be machmir.
Right.
It's not like that. It's not really like that. No, it's not part of the hefker. It's like a different issue. It's a I say to do that. But when you cut it, act like a biome, you're going to stir up on it. You're right. Borders on that the hefker.
Well, how you show by because you do everything?
Because what?
Because you're doing a large amount.
We do a large amount. You bundle it up.
At which point are you going to have market? The first bit of the shkayaya.
Okay, I don't know. Okay, and the last of the malachos in these psukim is it's invading the Zoreah siftar. Okay, which is betzira with grapes is the same as ketzira for other things. And it means it's to act like the owner, like the guy in the quickly pierced by picture, taking up big boxes of it, acting the way the owner does. That's the issue, but it's not by grapes. Okay, so those
other fruit trees don't have it.
Other fruit trees.
There's no issue of betzira or whatever harvesting.
Of harvesting. No, that's if it fits into the first one. If it fits into the first in tzviach ketzir cholesh.
That's tour.
That's for.
So for zaysim or for anything else.
I don't remember. I don't remember if Kotzer only applies to grapes. I'm not sure if that's true. Kotzer only is by grapes. I don't remember.
It's the same thing.
Correct. I'm not sure. Okay. So now, these are the four, if you can use the word, easy malachos. Basically everyone agrees, it's four things in the pasuk, and we learned that those four malachos are Shemittah. Okay. Now, there's two other malachos that are the machlokes, whether they are or not Shemittah. Okay. And they are like this. The two malachos are Choresh and noteah. Okay, they are like this. Okay, this is Choresh. Okay, now, for this time, the picture actually has significance. Really. Which is...
It's got to be from India.
No, but this is, you'll see the picture of the gate, and there's like this. How would we know that Choresh is also? It didn't say it in the pasuk. The Choresh of Kotzer Tishbos is a machlokes in the Gemara whether that pasuk is talking about Shvius or not, and the din is that it's not. The din is that it's not talking about Shvius. The Choresh of Kotzer Tishbos, right? It's a machlokes in the Gemara. We pass in, so to speak, that it's not talking about Shvius. So how do we know that it's also? So the way we know it is we talked way back at the beginning. We spoke about that there's a din of Tosefes Shvius. There's a din at certain times. It's not negay anymore nowadays, but there was a din of Tosefes Shvius. Tosefes Shvius is learned from a halacha l'Moshe Sinai, according to one side of the Gemara, which is how we pass it. It's learned from a halacha l'Moshe Sinai that you have to have Tosefes Shvius. How did the halacha l'Moshe Sinai say that you have to have Tosefes Shvius? It says in a field that has the right amount of trees, that's when you're allowed to be Choresh. You're allowed to be Choresh a field that has certain tiers, that has the right certain structure of how the field looks like. Then you're allowed to do Charisha. From which we learned that you're not allowed to do Charisha before Shvius if it didn't have that setup. If the field wasn't exactly the right way, you're not allowed to do Charisha before Shvius. Well, if you're not allowed to do Charisha before Shvius in certain fields, from the Halacha Mishnah, obviously, on Shvius you're not allowed to do Charisha either. In the Torah telling you don't even do it from a month before, let's say from a month before, you're not allowed to do Charisha. Obviously, you're not allowed to do Charisha on Shvius itself either.
It's only halacha l'Moshe Sinai.
So it's halacha l'Moshe Sinai.
How do you make it to say that it's on Shvius too?
Well,
halacha l'Moshe Sinai could be dark for whatever reason.
So how can it be the halacha l'Moshe Sinai? You came to a halacha before a Shviistic halacha beforehand.
It's halacha l'Moshe Sinai. It might be dark.
No, so that's not understood that way. It's not understood that way. And most hold, not everybody, everybody holds that Choresh is a malacha deraisa based on halacha l'Moshe Sinai. Now it's halacha l'Moshe Sinai. You don't get malchus for it. Okay, but most hold, not everybody, but most hold that it's Choresh is a deraisa. Now, if you look at the picture, you'll see Choresh is I didn't understand it until I saw the picture. That's the truth. Which is like this: when a person is Choresh, he needs an animal. Okay, but if a person took an animal and put a plow into the back of it, he'll get nothing. Okay, a person tries to plow just with an animal, attaching a plow to the back of the animal, nothing's going to happen, and that's because what Choresh means is you drag something through the ground to turn the dirt over and to make the furrow so you could plant it to it or to cover the plant over. Well, that doesn't happen. The plow is going to fall right out of the ground. It's going to pop out of the ground, and as the resistance of the ground is going to make it pop up. So the way your Choresh is, the animal does the schlepping, but the person, as you see in the guy in the picture, the person stands behind it, making sure to hold it down. The person has to hold it in the ground, or else it's going to fly right out. So the animal but he does the heavy schlepping, and he pulls it through the ground, but the Choresh only happens because the person is helping by holding it down and keeping it in the ground. If the person wasn't there, it would pop out of the ground pretty quickly, and you would get no Choresh. Okay, it would just scratch the surface instead of digging into the ground. Okay? Why am I telling you that? Because there's a Melachos HaPoskim, a contemporary poskim. Most of what I'm about to say comes from Brusherwise. A Melachos in contemporary poskim that depends on this thing like this. The Ramban is a kasha. Well, the Pirush that we have called the Ramban at the end of Masechta Shabbos, the newer prints don't have it, in case you're looking for it, because it's supposedly not in the Ksav Yad. It seems that those last few pages are Talmud of the Ramban. But anyhow, what we have in the old Rambans, as the Ramban towards the end of Masechta Shabbos, says like this. The Gemara says, in the end of Shabbos, the Gemara says that if an animal carries a package in the Rosh Hashanah, it's something called Machamer, and the Gemara says you don't get Misa or Malchus for being Machamer, because we have a limud that a person only gets a punishment if they do something to be a dayim. Since Machamer, the animal does it, it might be usher mid'oraisa to be Machamer, but you're not doing anything, the animal's doing the schlepping, and therefore there's no Misa or Malchus for being Machamer. That's what the Gemara says. Frek Ramban, he says, okay, so how come, if that's why Machamer doesn't get Malchus and doesn't get Misa, how come Choresh does? When you're Choresh, the animal does the malacha, you're not doing anything, the animal's doing the malacha. Just like when you're Machamer, the animal's doing the malacha, but when you're Choresh, also the animal's doing the malacha. So why for Charisha, could a person get Misa or Malchus for being Choresh, when for Machamer, you don't get it? Okay, that's Ramban's kasha. Okay? You want to say something?
So he says like, it's just like being a machine or something.
What did you say?
It's like the Mechamer, the person's just being a machine.
Well, in Mechamer and Choresh, nothing would happen to the animal. Right? In Mechamer, the animal carries the package, and Choresh, the animal does the plowing. So there's a person involved. For mechamer, you don't get malchus even if you walk next to the animal and make sure the package doesn't fall off either. So what's the difference between being mechamer and being choresh? Both of them are animal based. Okay, everything needs the animal, and you just have like a side role in what's going on over here. Okay, so the Raman gives an answer. The Raman gives an answer. The Raman gives an answer like this. He says like this: a person who's choresh, okay, he puts nice and level oil. Okay, he gets the animal to do the malacha. Kol ha-malacha al shem ha-adami, and the animal is just, in his words, is kli biyad uman. Okay, the animal is just a kli biyad uman. In the Sefer HaMitzvahs, when the Ramban talks about the same din, it's also in the Sefer HaMitzvahs. There, where it's really the Ramban. The Ramban, when he talks about in the Sefer HaMitzvahs, he says it's like a guy who's chopping down wood with an axe. No one would say that the guy's botzer because the axe did the malacha. The axe is just a tool that the person's doing it with. So here also, the behema is just a tool, as opposed to by mechamer, the behema is not a tool. By mechamer, the behema is doing everything, and you're just like the shomer. You're just keeping an eye on it and watching out that things should go the way it is. But the animal does everything. Here, the animal would do nothing. Okay, here, if not that you were holding it down and being along there for the malacha wouldn't happen. The animal can walk all day long and he won't plow without you. As opposed to by mechamer, the animal could plow good and well. The animal could be mechamer fine without you. You're just helping out a little bit. Over here, the animal could not be choresh if not that you were doing it. Okay, so that's what the Ramban says. Now, there's a question is how to understand what the Ramban says. Rav Pesach Frank says that what the Ramban means is that in this case, you walk alongside the animal the whole time. If not that you would walk alongside it, the malacha wouldn't happen. As opposed to by mechamer, the person who helps with the packaging, I'm putting words in his mouth, it's just the organizer. He's just making sure things happen the way they're supposed to, but the animal's doing everything. That means is, he says, what would happen if I have a machine that I could set up to do malacha by itself? I have a machine that plants or plows or does something by itself, and I turn the machine on. So I'm the organizer, I'm making things happen, but I'm not involved in the malacha. The malacha happens by itself. The machine runs off by itself. So he says, in Cain, it would be like a mechamer. And he said that would not be an issa d'oraisa, according to Ramban. Now the Ramban is like a Shabbos, but for the Shvius part, he says it would not, because even though I am the organizer of what goes on over here, but the machine does the malacha by itself, and it's like a mechamer. So he says it would not be an issa d'oraisa to do that. Lafuki, wait, let me just finish. Lafuki, Chazon Ish says, he says, no. The nafkamina that Ramban needs to make between a mechamer and a choresh is, by choresh, you play a crucial role in the malacha happening. If not for you, the malacha can't function without you. And if when you set the machine in motion, also it wouldn't function without you doing it. As opposed to by mechamer, there you're playing a really incidental role. You're not playing a crucial role. You're playing like an incidental role, and that's enough community. Okay, so it comes out. Well, I'm also using what you said. Comes out that according to Rav Pesach, if you set the machine in motion, you just set the machine in motion, but the machine does it at that point, does it all by itself. That's not a malacha d'oraisa.
I never done a noch, by Ritzicha and stuff like that, you know.
Okay, by Ritzicha, it's more kal.
Okay.
By Ritzicha.
You put the noch on the person with Chemis, right?
That's because you did everything.
Okay, so the machine, he did everything. I put on the machine.
So he says, but by mechamer also, if I put the package on the animal's back, but the animal doesn't walk by itself then. So over here. So he's saying, so then, here are machoikas here. What the Ramban means. The point is, does the person have to be playing a crucial role, or does the person have to be mamish doing the malacha the whole time? Okay, what do you want to say about it?
No, Lashon the Ramban ain't a behemoth like a kli biyad uman is mashma. I think a little bit more like the Chazon Ish, that the behemoth is serving as your machine. If you mamish have a machine, so you know that you're triggering to do the work. I would see more like the case of the machine doesn't have a mind of its own. It's only working because you're triggering it. A behemoth can do the work on its own. It needs a little encouragement.
Okay, so that's, the Chazon Ish says that this shita of this other tzad, this, I don't remember if he called it Tzvi Pesach by his name, but this other tzad is going like a shita that's Dochuim and Hadim, which he says, this is a Magen Avram who says, if a person takes grain and puts it into a water-powered mill, and you dump the grain in, the Magen Avram says you're not urban issa d'oraisa, because the mill does everything by itself. And the Chazon says, no, but we don't pass like that. He brings a whole pile of people, Mishabur included, who don't pass like that. And that the thing is, if you put it into the mill, and the mill does the milling because you set it in motion, then that's considered that you did the mill. Okay, so the how practical, I'm not sure how practical this shaila is. It sounded like it was, at that time, it was just practical. I'm not sure we have such a thing that we set machines in motion, they do the thing by themselves. But the Chazon Ish, in explaining his shita, makes a point that just helps us understand.
You can get nowadays you can get a car that's with GPS can go on its own.
Right.
You put something on it,
Right.
you're around the time.
Right. So I don't know how. I don't know. You could. I'm saying, in theory, it sounded to them like it was a practical thing. I don't know if we have such a mitzvah.
You have it in your picture there, you know. You have,
No, the way we have it, the guy drives the truck the whole time.
He's not be driving it. So.
Don't drive this truck. Well, there's the guy in the back, you know. Okay, Jose in the back, you know. Okay, anyhow, but so the Chazon Ish has a nafkamina for he makes a point about Avos and toldos, and he says like this, just for helping for understanding of Avos and toldos. He says like this. He says, well, the difference between an Av and a tolda has to be that there's a different outcome, a different result of the thing that you did. For example, when you're a Zoreah, you put things in the ground and they grow. When you water things, that's a primary example of a drop-on. When you water things, it also makes things grow. So it has the same goal as planting, but it doesn't have the same result. The result of putting seeds in the ground is you get plants, and putting water in the ground is that the plants and they grow better. So getting water on the ground, getting seeds on the ground are two different things. That's an Av and a tolda. But if you do the same result, just in different methods, meaning I seed by hand or I seed by machine, the end result is the same. The result is that there are seeds in the ground. He says that's not an Av and a tolda. That's both others. It's only an Av and a tolda if the Chazon Ish. It's only if the result comes out different. But if the result is the same, you have a just different way of getting to that result. That's not considered an Av and a tolda. Those are both asur midaraisa. A tolda is only when it's something different. We will see soon. You fumigate a tree. Okay, so that helps it grow better. Okay, well, fumigating and planting are not the same thing. They're related. They both make things grow. They have the same goal at the end, but what you're getting is not the same. One gets plant seeds in the ground. One gets bugs out of the tree. They're not the same thing. So the Chazon Ish says if you get the same result, those are both the same Av. But if you don't get the same result, you just get the same goal. That's a total. Okay.
So this is all supposing that. There's a shiloh, if you are mitzvah in your karka, no work should be done in your karka.
We're going to talk about that. We're not at that today. We're going to talk about that. Why do you say that's dependent on that?
Because it's not your malacha, but malacha is being done in your karka.
Oh, you're right. If you would say that there's an issue to have malacha done, and you set it in motion to have malacha done, then you'd be over.
No, it's not your ma'aseh.
So you're saying is, you see from all these people that they didn't hold like that, which they don't. These people don't hold to that. There are others who do. We'll get to that. Maybe 2 times. Okay. The other malacha that might be deraisa, the other malacha which is not one of the 4 listed, that might still be a malacha deraisa, is the malacha of noteah. What does that mean? In Lashon Kodesh, the word Zoreah means to plant grains and vegetables, and the word noteah means to plant trees. So in English, we don't use 2 different words for that, but in Lashon Kodesh they mean different things. So when the Torah says Sod Chali Sizra, that means that you shouldn't be planting grains and vegetables, but that doesn't yet mean that you're not allowed to plant a tree. And Sakha Machlokes about that. The Rebbeinu Tam says that noteah is just a tolda of Zoreah, and therefore, since it's only a tolda, we practically that toldas are only asur d'Rabbanan. Therefore, if a person is noteah, that's only asur d'Rabbanan. There's no issa d'oraisa to plant a tree. And the Rash brings this Rebbeinu Tam, and then he himself argues, and he says that it's like asur d'oraisa. We'll explain soon in a minute how that could be asur d'oraisa, or what that means, but that's what the Rash says. So that's it. So that's a machlokes rishonim, and on top of that, there's a machlokes in the achronim as to what the Rambam holds. The Melachos and the Ekletal and the Pasuk Shulchan say that the Rambam holds that it's a d'Rabbanan, that noteah is a d'Rabbanan. The Chazon Ish says that the Rambam holds that noteah is a d'oraisa, and Rav Kook and Rav Vosner give a compromise, and they say is that it depends. If a person plants a tree, but plants a whole tree in the ground, like plants a big piece of tree in the ground to make it grow further, that's what's more asur d'Rabbanan. But if a person is noteah by planting a seed into the ground, that's essentially the same as planting a seed of grains or vegetables, and the male, that's asur d'oraisa. So really what's going on here is as follows. The reason why Rav Kook and Rav Vosner are saying this is as follows. that there's really a raya to the Rash. There's a Gemara in Gittin, in Gimel Beis, almost a Beferish Gemara that says that noteah is asur midaraisa on Shvius. Noteah is asur midaraisa. So we had this question: how could anybody say that it's only asur midarabanan on this sort of Beferish Gemara? So this Rav Kook and Rav Osner are answering that sort of be miyasha that by saying that what the Gemara there says that it's a deraisa means when you planted a tree through a seed. So the malacha that you're doing is Zoreah, and Zoreah is asur midaraisa. But if you plant a tree in the way that in the traditional noteah way, which is by putting a big tree into the ground, putting a piece into the ground that it grows from there, that's what's also midrabanan. There are other answers to the Gemara Gittin. The Melachos said that maybe that Gemara is going on according to the Abaya holds that toldos are also midaraisa. There may be other answers, but so the long and short is that we have this machlokes Rishonim. Some Rishonim hold that noteah is also midaraisa. Some Rishonim hold noteah is also only a toldos, it's only drabanan, and some are saying to be machalik within the sheet. So they're trying to be machalik that sometimes it's a deraisa and sometimes it's a drabanan depending on how you plant it. So in this sheet, the Rash who said that it's an issa deraisa, all kinds of planting of trees, no matter what, it's an issa deraisa. So we have a question, which is how could it be asur midaraisa? How could it be? We said that there's a rule. The Gemara makes a rule that says that the only things that are asur are the things that are beferish in the Torah. We added Choresh because that was halacha l'mashim Sinai. Okay, so we had those 5 malachas that are asur. And how could noteah be asur when the Torah says specifically, when the Gemara said specifically that only the Avos are asur and not the toldos? So the answer from a few different places. This is a Radvaz and a Chazanish. Together, Rabbi Sement says something similar. Also, different people coming together to say the following things like this. The Mechilta says that the pasuk says Kein tasa lecha mechal zeisecha, that you should treat your kerem and your zayis the same, your grape tree and your olive tree should be treated the same. And the Mechilta says you learn from there that le'inyan the din of kedusha shvius. That's what it's talking about. When you din of kedusha shvius, the same halachas of kedusha shvius apply to all the fruit of all trees, not just the kerem. In as far as pruning, the Torah was specific. Then pruning is only asur midaraisa for grapes, but for kedusha shvius, the same din apply for grapes and all other trees. All trees are the same. So the Rambam holds that that's a limud that not just for the dinim of kedusha shvius, but for all other dinim of Shemittah except for pruning. All other dinim of Shemittah, we compare all trees to one another. So therefore, that at least gives us the beginnings of an understanding. What could be a limud that would tell us that it would be usher to apply to plant trees? And we'll see more about this in a second. So, excuse me. Now, we'll put that on the side for a second and go back to the drush itself. The Gemara says that, the pasuk says that Zomer is asur. Zomer means to prune a grape tree. So, if Zomer is asur, there's now a following kal v'chomer. The kal v'chomer is like this: Zomer, pruning a grape tree helps the tree grow better. Well, if make the tree grow better is asur midaraisa, then kal v'chomer for sure. If I make the whole tree grow completely, I plant it in the ground, surely that should be asur midaraisa. And so there's a kal v'chomer that says that noteah should be asur as a kal v'chomer. So that means to say is even though a tolda is only going to be asur midrabanan, we have this rule that toldos can only be asur midrabanan, but this is not a tolda. This is a kal v'chomer, and somehow kal v'chomer is better. Just as an aside, you don't get malchus. That's why you don't get malchus, because in Shemittah din you can't get malchus because it's only kal v'chomer, but yet it could be asur midaraisa. So what's coming down is like this. What we're doing is as follows. We're saying there's a kal v'chomer that tells us that if Zomer is asur, then noteah must surely be asur. That's a kal v'chomer. Now we say we have a mechilta that tells us that all trees have equal din. The din is the same for one tree as for another tree. Well, on the other hand, we know that Zomer is dafka for grape trees and not for all other trees. So on the one hand, we have the Zomer that tells us that only grape trees have this dinim, not other trees. And on the other hand, we have a mechilta that tells us that the dinim for all trees are equal. So the way we come to a compromise about these two, how do we reconcile these two sheets together, is to say the following: as relates to Zemira, as it relates to pruning, grapes are different, but not as it relates to anything else. And the Chazanish explains with the following words. He says, "Hazimur shoshar ilonos." Zomer, when a person prunes other trees, choluk mizimur geffen. It's very different from pruning. It's different than pruning of grape trees. Mitzad tiv avodas, which from the way that it works, and Rabbi Linda explained what that means is that when you prune in other trees, pruning is beneficial to the tree and it does it helps it grow better, etc. But for a grape tree, for a grapevine, if a person doesn't prune that grapevine, they'll have nothing. Okay, grapevine over a short amount of time, there'll be nothing left if a person doesn't do pruning. So if that's what it means, or something else, but there's something very unusual about the pruning of grape trees, and therefore we understand like this: when the Torah says you can't prune grape trees, the Torah is being very specific and saying only that tree you can't prune. But as far as other melachos, as far as everything else about Hilchos Shvius, we go with the drasha of the Mechilta. The Mechilta tells us that all trees are equal. It doesn't make a difference. And grapes are not different. Kain Tasel, Charmecha, Zizecha, Karam and Zayis are all the same, and therefore all trees have the same. They have the same dinim. So if you're not being a noteah grapevine, you're not allowed to be noteah any other tree. How do I know I'm not allowed to be noteah grapevine? That was from the Kavachim. So I have a Kavachim telling that I can't be noteah a grapevine, and now I have the Mechilta telling me that whatever I can't do to a grape, I can't do to anything else either. So we're a little bit stuck here with a question, which is, so that's the potential limud, but we're a little bit stuck with a question, which is that we have a kal v'chomer to tell us that you can't plant the grapevine, and now we're going to say that, well, planting of grapes is the same as planting of oranges, so planting oranges is also. But isn't that an example of Canadian? Isn't that an example? What we're doing is we're saying that we made a kal v'chomer to teach us you're not allowed to plant grapevines, and now we're making a limud off of that planting of grapevines that you're also not allowed to plant orange trees or any other tree. Well, but the whole source of this limud, is the Torah saying that you're not allowed to be Zomer, and there the Torah is very specific. You're only not allowed to be Zomer grapes. So how could we end up that you're not allowed to plant other trees? We can't, even if there's a logic, and there's a limud that says as well, pruning has there's nothing special about pruning grapevines, but the whole limud of noteah, the whole limud that you're not allowed to plant trees, comes from a grape, and from a din that's very specific to grapes. So there was a reason there, because the mirror of grapes is different. But might say it came from a din that's only specific to grapes. Shouldn't we say that it's specific to grapes, it can't apply to anything else, and therefore there should be no isser noteah for other things? Okay, so obviously they're not learning this way. Now obviously they're learning that once we've learned that you're not allowed to be noteah, and noteah of grapes and other trees is all the same. So Kain Tasel Charmecha Zizecha tells you all trees are the same. Don't worry about this dialogue of the Midas Kingdom. But it's hard to exactly understand it, because we learned that noteah for grapes from Zomer of grapes, and by Zomer of grapes it's very specific. Only Zomer of grapes is also. Yet still we're coming out that noteah, which we learned from with the kal v'chomer, noteah applies to all trees based on the Mechilta. Okay, so anyhow, just to summarize, before we summarize, so we have this is the possible hesber for how someone could hold that noteah is an issa deraisa. The limud, there's a possible raya from a Gemara in Gittin, but the limud would have been through a kal v'chomer. It's a kal v'chomer to tell us that noteah for all trees is also, that noteah for grapes is also, and then a limud, that other trees have the same din and that noteah is also by them. This is some Rishonim hold like that, but as we said, the other Rishonim do not agree with that, and other Rishonim hold that there's an isser, there's only isser d'Rabbanan to be noteah, it's never an isser d'Oraisa, and then there was a compromise shita, which says it is asur d'Rabbanan, but it's asur d'Oraisa if you plant it from a seed. Okay, so to summarize, we had 4 melachos that were clear with d'Oraisa. Zomer, what are the four melachos with d'Oraisa? 4 melachos d'Oraisa: Zomer, Zoreah, Zomer, Kotzer, and botzer. Those are the 4 melachos that are for sure d'Oraisa. We had another melacha that not everybody holds as the Rabbanim. That's that almost everybody holds as a d'Oraisa. That's the melacha of Choresh. That comes from the halacha l'mishvi Sinai from based on Toldos Shvius. And then the last was that we had a shaila as to whether a noteah of trees is or is not a melacha d'Oraisa.